Hello and welcome to Prog Slog, where we go through 2000 AD issue by issue. I'm Michael.
And I'm Craig.
And today we are looking at Prog 2351, which is a jumping on issue, really.
Yeah, it's like, if you've never read Toucan before, here's a place to start.
Yeah, which is probably where we should have started the podcast if we were planning it.
Yeah.
But, as I said in the first episode, the best place to start with 2000 AD is just wherever you do.
I think we got a good episode out of that first one, and we covered a lot of good topics.
And it will also be relevant to the stories in the jumping on issue.
Yes.
So, you want to do the cover first?
Yeah, so the most notable thing about the cover...
Well, before we get into the most notable thing about it, let's look up who did it. The cover art is by John McCree.
John McCree, I would say.
John McCree, or McCrea.
McCree.
As always, write in and correct us.
Please, for the love of God. We've only seen these things written down.
Yeah. The cover is an image of long-standing character in Judge Dredd who isn't about very much anymore, Walter the Woobot.
Walter the Woobot. Who
is a TV-faced robot, and the fact that he's a TV-faced robot has been used to great effect by John, whatever your name is, by having Robo Hunter posed in the Z space. So from our perspective, we are Robo Hunter aiming a gun at Walter, but his TV face is reflecting the fact that it's Robo Hunter at the viewer, so that we can see who it is. And then behind that, Judge Dredd is bearing down on Walter with his, what do they call it, a nightstick? Might go for truncheon.
Day stick? Yeah, we are British. Walloper.
It is very covered in blood.
Is that Robo Hunter's blood? Because it's dripping on Robot. It's dripping on Walter as well.
I think the drip on Walter is a different colour, so I think that's supposed to be motor oil.
He's sweating.
It might be sweat.
Yeah, he's robot sweating.
So, do you like it?
I like it. I like covers that have white backgrounds. That's a particular interest of mine, specifically for 2000 AD, because it makes everything pop. And, yeah.
It's certainly very readable.
It's a very, good cover for, lapsed readers, because you've got two classic 2000 AD characters on the cover.
Well, do you think it's a good cover for lapsed readers because it's got specifically Robo Hunter on it?
Yes, no.
Robo Hunter is one of those characters, I guess we'll get into it, because Robo Hunter does appear in this prog.
It is not a line cover, which I think is something we should have as a feature.
Oh, yeah.
Is this cover a line cover?
Because the last one kind of was, because there were characters that we didn't recognise from the inside of the cover.
Didn't recognise, and also they didn't meet up. And, yeah.
But, anyway, what I was saying was Robo Hunter is one of these characters who, must have been big in the 80s or something, because I only ever see him pop up for, special guest appearance stories.
I have no connection to him at all. I've seen him in progs, I've gotten previous old progs, and I've flipped through, and I've seen that he's there.
He has an e-cigarette.
He does.
Who is a robot guy.
A little companion, a wisecracking Stogie or whatever.
His name is Stogie, yeah. He's got two robots, one of whom's a frog guy, and it's Stogie and Hoagie.
Stogie. So he seems, correct us if I'm wrong, he seems like a gag character.
I always thought so, yeah. But
we'll get to it when we get to it. I imagine for the over 40s in the audience, seeing him on the cover is a plus.
Do you think that 2000 AD should be doing things specifically to reach out to their over 40s audience?
No. I think that's their base, certainly. I think their over 40s audience, it doesn't necessarily need to be pandered to, but it is a sizable chunk of who is buying the comic. On the whole, I would say they do need to skew younger into the teens, into a more maybe this is heresy, but manga demographic.
I think that they could do that. I don't think that it necessarily needs to be manga they go after. I think it could be. There's a lot of sci-fi stuff in manga and anime.
Well, it's specifically the art style
and
the language of manga, because that's what the teens are into.
Yeah.
And they've got their over 40 demographic with all of the crusty old men stuff that they print. And they've got their regens that are going after the youth.
We mentioned this before we started recording, and I should have held off on it, but I'll say what I said before, which is that this cover, from interesting idea perspective, is excellent. This use of Walter as the reflective surface, and the fact that the action of the cover comes out into what they call Z space, where the space behind the reader is part of the scene.
It's meta.
It's very good. I've not seen that done very often. I think that John McCree has done very well there. But I don't really like his take on Dredd's face.
I like it. It's all crumpled. He's all fascistly angry.
I would say that, like, it definitely works. It's not necessarily like a piece of artwork I would hang on a wall.
We should go, before we move on to the command module, we should talk about the most notable thing about the cover, and that is the price increase.
Oh, yes, you're quite right.
Because we've talked a lot about the actual cover, but the main event is the small 10p increase
It's
on the cover.
10p more expensive this week to get 2000 AD than it was last week.
And this is a tactic they employ. They have a special that's like a $5, and then every time that happens, I'm dreading it because, like, dreading it, I know. I was very happy with that. Dreading it because, like, the next week, is it going to be more money to buy 2CAD every week?
And in this case, yes.
Do you have any hot takes about the 10p increase?
Not really. Tharg does.
Tharg does. I have a take. It's not particularly hot. It's
Let's hear it anyway.
There's nothing particular. Like, I don't want comics to rise in price.
No.
I think that comics should be cheap.
I would like everything to be free so I could have it all.
Yeah, exactly. Everything should be free. But at the same time, I do respect that, artists and everything, writers need to be paid.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Actually,
if I'm being serious,
it's a commercial venture, and I understand that everything's gone up, and there is a paper shortage. Right? People keep telling me that there was a paper shortage, so there are real world factors in it.
Also, just inflation has been crazy.
Yeah. I think Tharg calls that out.
Yeah,
but there is a problem because what is it? It's $3.60 now.
£3.60.
£3.60 for your comic. That's fine. That's like 10p more expensive than getting a meal deal.
It is less expensive than getting an issue of Superman.
That's a whole other kettle of fish where we could talk about American comics. It's a £4 problem.
I think that's important because if you're comparing 2000 AD, which has in this case 4 different stories in it, to like American comics, which is like one story, maybe it's longer, but also there's a lot of adverts in those.
There's adverts in them for other comics.
Yeah.
Yes. This is cheaper than buying Superman, and I think that's damning because Superman should be the cheapest comic you can buy on.
We won't get too far into it,
but as a plus point for 2CAD, you are getting more bang for your buck.
Yeah.
And there's nothing wrong with it being £3.60. It's just when you start to push up against the £4 mark, I find that to be a problem because it's maybe just a psychological thing.
It absolutely is a psychological thing because if I think of something as being around £3, psychologically that's nothing.
Yeah.
If I think of something as being around £5, that starts to be something.
I mean, it's like £5 for your Superman.
Yeah.
Ridiculous because and you're not getting the bang for the buck and you're not getting the density that you would say get in a 2CAD.
Yeah.
But I remember the days when you could get 5 comics for a tenner.
Yeah, absolutely.
It wasn't necessarily that long ago.
No.
And I do respect...
Although I have things to say about how long ago things were.
Yes, yeah. But it's something to be watchful of, because if this happens again, when will this happen again? I'm pretty sure that the price has gone up maybe once in the time that I've been reading it since we jumped back on to 2CAD, and it was another 10p increase. There was a point within the last 2 years where 2CAD was staggeringly cheaper than a normal American comic by 20, 30p or whatever, and it felt like you were getting much, much more for you.
Yeah.
But that is a dwindling thing if the price is going to keep increasing. Also, I checked how many pages were in this issue because
there's only 4 stories.
There's only 4 stories, and I was like, normally I wouldn't check, but the price increase and the fact that there was only 4 stories was they actually have the cut pages. They've not.
Good.
By my counting. It's 32 including the cover and the back cover.
I would suspect that they've probably done 4 stories because they have more pages overall per story, given how many of these are new stories.
They're introductory stories.
They all are, aren't they?
Yeah, well, the Robo Hunter thing is a one-off.
Yeah, it definitely feels like a one-off.
But we'll get into it when we hit the extra things, but yes, they are. And that's fine.
I would say, I'm maybe getting into it before I was meaning to, but I would say that if this prog has a theme, then it's gone or not forgotten, gone but not forgotten, or it's, hey, remember this?
Remember this, kids?
Yeah.
Kids in your 40s,
well,
remember this?
It's not necessarily remember this, kids,
yeah.
But everything is, I'll point it out as we go why I was thinking that. But let's go to the nerve center. So I've actually got something to say about what Tharg's saying this time, because he's talking about, the usual stuff. Last week was the battle action merger. Now we're getting back to the normal stuff. We've got Judge Dredd, Feral and Foe, Helium, and Robo Hunter in the comic. Tharg says, that Helium's in this issue, and I was like, oh yeah, Helium, I read that. And he's like, returning after its incredible 8-year absence. And I just crumbled to dust because I'm so old.
Oh, that like
I was reading Helium, and I just in my mind it was just like, oh yeah, that's a thing that I read the last thing of. I didn't really internalize that it was 8 years ago.
we're at a dangerous point in the decade where like 8 years ago is 2015.
Yeah.
And 2015 doesn't feel like long ago at all.
It's starting to, though, because like it's before 2016, importantly, when everything changed.
The death of David Bowie. Yes, it is indeed. But also, that's when the first modern Star Wars film came out. And I still feel like we're sort of in that cycle.
Was that Force Awakens?
Force Awakens was like December of 2015.
So much has happened since then.
Yeah, I mean, it's been a million things a month since then.
But also, like, I'm starting to get to the point where I'm like, so much has happened since then, but also it does feel like it just was 5 minutes ago.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I think of Force Awakens as a recent film.
Yeah, exactly. And
young people will be like, rolling their eyes at that. But like,
well, they absolutely should be, because we're incredibly old.
I didn't know about Helium before maybe last issue when they were calling out that it was coming back. So I didn't have this same reaction that you did to Tharg. But I do have that reaction to things on a daily basis.
Yeah. He also says that they're increasing the price by 10p, but take a good look at the offer subscribers get and tell me you don't get maximum bang for your groats. So presumably... They're doing something with the subscriptions. Well,
there's a wee ad for it in the little ad box in the command module. It says, I think you're getting the Kiss My Axe pin that I called out that may have been cut from last issue.
Which is a Slade thing.
A Slade thing.
But Slade, of course, no longer running.
No, it's done.
Had the last issue of that ever.
I really enjoyed that last run, mainly because Slade threw javelins with his feet.
And called it out as being like a thing that people did.
A special attack of the Celts.
We asked a friend that we have who knows about like historical reenactment stuff if that's at all a thing, and he had no idea what we were talking about. But anyway,
I really like Tharg. See when he like says that they're raising the price. See when like the fictional editor is telling you that. That sort of dulls the blow slightly for me, because I feel like other publications just wouldn't mention it, and I feel like Tharg's nice enough to be like, and we're putting 10p on the comic. We're giving you other things if you subscribe, but like actually calling it out, I feel like is a step above what like an American thing would do.
Yes, I suppose so. The damage report. Kind of nothing again.
I was disappointed by the damage report.
Yeah.
It's on theme for the comic, because it's a jumping on damage report.
Yes, that's true. I hadn't put that together, but you're right, because they've totally dropped the whole AI ongoing storyline that was in there.
The stinger about Tharg having been discontinued years ago.
That was the end.
I didn't feel like the
end.
That felt like it was setting up to something. And this is like a damage report 001, basically. And it's the mech being like, I'll be positive, and don't worry, Tharg's not like looming over me. Why would you say that?
That's literally all that he's saying.
Mm-hmm. So there's nothing to talk about really, because there's no little story being developed.
I do want to keep calling out the damage report though, because it is so well hidden, and I think it's a nice little Easter egg.
We definitely need to raise awareness of the damage report. Yeah. It gets talked about in like letters columns and stuff, so people know about it, but the general public will have no idea.
So, the first story is Judge Dredd, Poison Part 1. In terms of what happens here, we open on Dredd looking at a big statue of Hershey. So as I was saying, theme gone but not forgotten. Mm-hmm. Here she is, Hershey, she died. The very next actual story that isn't some weird alternate universe thing.
What if in 1982 these old man products combined?
Yeah, we've got, first thing is Dredd like contemplating the memory of Hershey. She's got a great big statue that says, "Get out of my city and back to hell" at the bottom. Which
presumably something she said.
Absolutely. And Dredd is having a wee moan in his head about how no one is looking at the statue.
I felt like there was a disconnect between this Dredd story from the very first page there and the Hershey story.
Go on.
Well, I mean, you might have the same opinion as me from what you're gesticulating at back there, but I didn't necessarily feel through the Hershey story that Dredd necessarily gave any kind of fuck that Hershey was dying. Mm-hmm. And she dies in such a she collapses on the job from her like alien poison or whatever, and it's such like a little it's a pathetic death for like a great fascist hero or whatever, which I liked. and thought was like a complicated sort of messy death, and we talked about that last issue. But in this, like, Dredd's like upset that she's dead, and they had a reunion in the last few Progs, like, and it didn't. He felt suitably like cold and evil and fascist to his like friend of 30 years, and in this he's upset that the citizens won't look up at the statue of Hershey. And I was like, I mean, it's a different thing. It's a different writer than that. I didn't even check.
Oh, God, yes. We haven't even called out
We need to call out the writers and
things. We need to remember things. So, the script on this is Rob Williams. The art is by P.J. Holden. The colours are by Peter Doherty. And the letters are by Simon Boland.
I didn't actually check if it was a different writer, which is something I should probably get on for the pod. But, like, it felt like Dredd wasn't invested in Hershey before now, and now that she's dead. Maybe it's good, like, hypocritical fascist work. But I didn't necessarily feel it as... Because we'll get into it in the story, but I didn't necessarily feel the need for this story, the setup for the story, having read that Hershey. If you've not read the Hershey and you've just heard that she died, this would make sense, I guess.
Absolutely, and also my reaction to Hershey dying was a bit like, what the fuck? Because like there was one mention of the fact that she needed to take drugs for something or other.
That's been a continuing
thing.
Then
she just died. So I think this is actually maybe like... particularly for me, because I wasn't particularly aware of what the situation was that led to that. I agree with everything you were saying there. Shall I tell you why I think it's good?
Go on.
So, I think that Judge Dredd, whether or not he's actually written to be, comes off as extremely autistic.
Yes.
He's very rule-following, he's very reserved, he does have, like, strong internal life, like, emotions, but he has the worst skills at communicating that you've ever seen. Last story that we were talking about was a Hershey story, so it was from Hershey's perspective, and Dredd was an external character. So, yes, Dredd came off as if he didn't care at all. But now, like, after that, we're getting in the inside of Judge Dredd's head, and he's broken up about this. This is his best friend, or second best friend.
It's a named person that he knows.
She was one of the best judges he'd ever seen. He says that in here a bit later on.
You know, that is a very compelling argument. And maybe that makes me less, like, harsh towards the story, but... I mean, I definitely did feel that disconnect, and I might still feel it about, like, where the story goes. But, like, that... He is very autistic. He will, you know, defend any innocent non-lawbreaker's life, but punish a litterer.
I feel like in order to stop us from getting cancelled, we do not believe that being autistic is a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination.
Or in any way related to being, like, a fascist Nazi
no,
super cop. Like... It's just your interpretation of...
It's just the kind of character that he is. It's a type of person you can be. And I think that is an element of Judge Dredd's character. Whether or not it's meant to be, that's my interpretation.
And it'll, like, ebb and flow depending on the writers and the story. I want to call out some things about the art. I really like the art. It's the Noam Chomsky artist.
Oh, yes.
And the statue of Hershey has bird shit on its head.
As all statues do.
As all statues do. And also, presumably, it was just put up, like... either this week or within the 8 months since Hershey's death that's established in this story.
It does look a bit like a concrete statue that, you know, you're saying that like it looks like an older statue than it would have to be. I think that other artists might be tempted to make it like an even more giant gold statue or something.
It is in the front like courtyard of the Hall of Justice, according to the first panel. So yeah, I mean, I'm surprised it isn't like... I
don't know, like I'm not saying that that's like necessarily a bad thing.
I don't know if it still exists, but there's, you know, it's old. There's old New York. It's like megacities are built on top of it. There was one of the early issues has the Statue of Liberty, and then like 10 times the size of it, the Statue of Justice, which is like a judge and like incredible work. So
that's good iconography.
This one seems like a statue that you might see like outside the Houses of Parliament. Like it's people sized.
Yeah, I mean, this could be a statue of Horatio Nelson or the Duke of Wellington.
I mean, I feel like she's
she's not on a horse. That's the difference, I guess.
And she doesn't have a cone on her head, and I don't think necessarily the judges would be, into that.
No, it would be very funny if she did have a cone on her head in future stories, though.
Also, the same panel with the shit on her head, there's a judges only parking bay next to the statue.
Oh yeah, I hadn't even noticed that. It's one parking bay.
Yeah.
Which Judge Dredd is parked next to.
Well, I mean...
Just to be a dick?
I don't know, like, the judges only might be its own space, and then, because there's a little white box that he is in.
Yeah. It looks like there's a judges only parking bay, and then Judge Dredd has intentionally parked in the parking bay next to it, to me. But I don't know, maybe
you wouldn't be able to see that it said judges only if he was on top of it on his bike. It's a good read. It's little details like that I love about like Judge Dredd and the sort of cyberpunk dystopia.
What happens in this story?
Yeah.
Judge Dredd is not just annoyed that people don't respect Hershey, he's also annoyed that she's died and they don't have a particularly clear idea of why. So he goes and talks to some scientists. Turns out that it's all to do with an alien virus,
an alien pathogen,
an alien
pathogen, which they did cover in the Hershey story. That's why she was taking the pills. Yeah. Presumably, she went on an adventure to a planet and got a disease. Yeah. But Dredd decides that this now needs to be investigated further, so he goes and gets his space vaccinations so he can go to space. They call out that the vaccinations that he's taking will absolutely not protect him from the same pathogen that killed Hershey. So that's important, readers. Yeah, they set that up, and I felt it was a little bit difficult to parse, because I was like, why is he getting injections?
He's getting injections so that you can be told that the injections won't protect him.
Yeah.
That's why.
He wears like a little space suit rebreather thing when he's on the planet that he goes to.
So there's like a shot of him being in a spaceship, and then there's a shot of him being on, I guess, is it the moon? Is he going to Luna?
I think he's going to an planet, right? This is the planet?
I guess. I don't know. Nubis.
Yeah.
They're on Nubis. Fair enough. He turns up on Nubis and then meets up with a Wally Squad judge, and we've already talked about Wally Squad.
We love Wally Squad. The
undercover guys. The Wally Squad judge is not Dirty Frank, but he does have a beard.
He does have a beard.
So I'm going to say that that's like part of the uniform.
Must have beard if you want to apply for Wally Squad. Well, all the judges are clean shaven usually, right? So that's how you tell.
Exactly. On Nubis, it turns out that the Wally Squad judge... He's gone to Nubis because the Wally Squad judge has arrested somebody for being the guy that infected Hershey.
A guy's bragging.
Yeah. They waited for 8 months, I think he said, before anybody had any crack. And so Hershey's been dead for 8 months. This story takes place 8 months after the last Prog that was in proper continuity.
Yeah.
Which is odd, because one of my favourite things about Judge Dredd is that he ages in real time.
It's difficult because, sometimes...
He did get de-aged that time.
He did get de-aged against his will, and also, sometimes you get, a 12-part story that covers, an afternoon's. Yeah. So you have to sort of jump around and...
Judge Dredd now is an incredibly old man.
The oldest man. The oldest judge.
His physical here, he's got his shirt off, and, I think they do a good job of, making him look like... obviously a muscular, fit man who has been muscular and fit for all of his life, but that life has been about 70 years long.
And on the mean streets of Mega City 1.
Yeah, because he's muscly, but he's got saggy muscles in a way, and his skin is
He's old in that way where he's fit, but also it's unpleasant to look at.
Yeah. And I've read some, I was saying, my mum's been into 2000 AD since it started, and I've read some of her old annuals and stuff. Mm-hmm. And in those, he's clearly a 20-something.
Yeah, he starts as a young protagonistic cop guy. But, speaking of oldness, this first panel at the top, he sees just gnarled old man jaw jutting out of that helmet. It's incredible. The consistency to which they keep his horrible face is amazing to me.
Back to the story. Dredd goes and meets with the Wally Squad guy. He says, we've got this guy under arrest. He was one of the doctors when Hershey was here. Mm. And he's now started bragging that he was the one that killed the chief judge.
Because he did the injections for Hershey.
Yeah.
And he failed to vaccinate her or...
I think the idea was that he poisoned her.
Poisoned her, yeah.
But anyway, so then Dredd is immediately just stalking into the room and starts roughing this guy up.
Yeah, that was the thing. I was going to call it good Dredd work, because that's the thing we should always call it.
I think it is good Dredd work.
Yeah, it's very good, Where Is She, Batman work,
Our fellow podcaster, David from the Boys from the Pod podcast, we've got him reading 2CAD.
We're already successful. We can quit now.
We absolutely. We've got one person reading the comic.
We've converted another human being.
He was saying that he didn't like Dredd roughing up someone in an interrogation. Mm. And I don't know if that's just he doesn't like seeing police roughing up people in interrogation, but Judge Dredd should absolutely be roughing up people in interrogation.
Well, this is the thing, because I was saying, if he was an innocent, I wouldn't like to see... Well, he might well be in it, but in Dredd's eyes, he sees this guy as a lawbreaker and a criminal. so he can do whatever he wants to him because he's an evil fascist judge. If this
he is the judge, jury, and executioner. Yeah. He is the ultimate authority.
Yes, and like if the setup was different, like if it was just an innocent and then he roughed him up, I still think that's valid because I've seen that happen many times. But I'd be less on board with it. But because his like pathological mind of like this like tick the box that he's committed any crime, he's just going to go in and like Batmanize him up.
So then the doctor says that he was paid. Let me see. I read this the other day. I think he says that he didn't actually.
No, he was just talking big, I think.
Yeah, he gave me the pathogen. I needed creds. So no, he did.
He did inject
Hershey, but he did it for someone else.
So, how do you feel about that? Because that's the stinger. That's the end of the strip. That's the next time.
If this was the guy who was responsible, this would be a one-issue story, and now we've got somewhere to go.
The guy is specifically calling out, like, the guy that paid him to poison Hershey is from Mega City 1.
Mega City 1, yeah.
How do you feel about, like, the guy...
I'll tell you why I like that. Because I don't like when Dredd goes to space.
I was going to bring that up, because that happened recently.
Yeah.
And I was alright with it, but like I definitely took your points at the time. I forget what the story was called, but he was in space looking for someone.
He was in space, he was hanging out with like sci-fi aliens, and like it's just slightly too high sci-fi for where I think Dredd should be.
I'm fine with it.
I'm fine with Dredd in space sometimes. Like this is actually fine. I did have a bit where he like turned up on Nubis and wearing his space cloak. Yeah. And I was like, is this going to be a space thing?
Yeah.
But like, it's, an interrogation. And I'm also fine with them going to Titan. Because Titan is like a similar enough feeling when it's setting within the 2000 AD.
I was going to say when it's hard sci-fi, but hard sci-fi is the wrong thing. But when it's like medium sci-fi, when it's like just restricted to the solar system and it's all like mega city installations on like Mars or whatever, that's like a different vibe from the story recently, which was like comedy space aliens on like a cantina bar planet. Like
Dredd was hanging out with like a cat man who was an alien, and
I think it's fine. I think it's really good when those aliens come to Mega City 1 and like
I would prefer them to be mutants if they're in Mega City 1.
I like the kitchen sink approach of 2008 of Mega City 1 and Dredd, where like vampires and space aliens.
True, there are vampires.
Like all the things exist at once, and like that's just a case for the day kind of thing. And you can use, you can do good metaphor work with like aliens from space and things. I really like that it takes us back to Mega City 1. No problem with that. What I don't like is that like there's an guy responsible for the death of Hershey.
Is it going to be this Smiley guy who I still don't really know?
I think he's dead. Like we weren't reading when Smiley was a thing. I think they killed him or dealt with him. He might be in jail. He might be in the cubes, but I don't think he's a current problem. I don't think he's at large because like that's what Hershey was doing. She was shutting down his legacy, which to me implies they dealt with him.
Yeah,
and then are dealing with all of his like remaining boys. So. Maybe.
I mean, but like that seems to be not Smiley. Smiley seems to be Hershey's nemesis.
Yeah.
If indeed she had one.
I think that's who led to her downfall. Yeah. And Dredd saying, "I don't have like
respect for you. Yeah, I don't respect your authority."
But I feel like it flies in the face of because like Hershey dies of a pathogen in an alleyway, and it's like a sad, pathetic death, and it being like a targeted attack kind of thing.
Presumably it already had been, like, that must have been established already.
Yeah. But, like, it didn't feel like she was... Because, like, they call out that she didn't go after her.
Yeah.
And, like, it wasn't like a revenge... Like, the Hershey story wasn't her going after a slow killer. It was her putting her affairs in order before dying of a not natural, but kind of natural thing. Like, she didn't get stabbed. She died from a biological problem. So, like, I don't know. It's just part of that disconnect between, like, the Hershey story and this story where, like, I don't necessarily need there to be a guy that killed Hershey and to be following up on it. But I think it's smart from, like, a jumping on point perspective because this is the start of a new story. Like, this is the part one, and also it's like, but we've got the continuity from Hershey. And
and, like, if you want to go back and read the stories that this is referencing, you can. Sort of stuff,
I think it's smart, but, like, I don't necessarily, like, need it to be a story about tracking down Hershey's murderer who's probably like a shock reveal on the page turn kind of thing.
I think that's a fine thing for it to be, and also like my take on it is like if you're going to kill Hershey, because like that was my main problem with Hershey's death is like, well, why are we doing this? If you're going to kill Hershey, you might as well get a story out of it.
Well, they killed her twice now.
Yeah.
And I don't know if people were unhappy that she died the first time, so they brought her back, and I think people were very unhappy that they brought her back.
Yeah.
But like, I guess I don't understand why you would kill Hershey. I don't understand why Hershey would stop being the chief judge, other than to set up eviler chief judges for drama.
Yeah, they would have had an idea for like the story to move forward.
The status quo of like Hershey being like the chief to Dredd.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, like that feels like a thing that they'll like when they do like. You know how they did the battle action stuff and it's nostalgia for them. When they do nostalgia stuff in the future, it'll be like Hershey nostalgia. And
could absolutely see that.
My big takeaway from this Dredd was that Hershey wanted her body shot into the sun.
She did.
That was like the best bit of that comic to me.
I've got another bit similar to that I wanted to bring up before we move on, which is that one of the doctors, when Dredd's getting his physical, is saying, can I ask you some questions about the thing where Hershey died? Because I only ask because, well, there are rumours about some sort of long walk.
Yeah.
Like, he's just like, well, what's the actual story here? Dredd's response, usual stony face, malice bubbling behind the visor, is, what do the official records say about Hershey's death? And he's like, killed by an alien pathogen, contracted off-world, as per wishes, flown into the sun. And then Dredd's left out, like... then that's what happened.
Yeah.
Just really like that. Just, what's the official story? That's my story.
That is the story. That is...
end of comment, mate.
End of page. I liked it, but like I say, I wasn't like necessarily inspired by the impetus for the story. Like I didn't necessarily feel the need for it.
I know that David was saying he didn't like the story either, and I think I probably liked it more than you did, and...
it's not bad in any way, and I love the art. Like, the art's cracking, but...
fair enough. Let's move on.
What is the next story in the...
The next story in the prog is Feral and Foe, Bad Goodsburg?
I can't read it because it's green words on a green background.
I think it's Goodsburg. Is that the name of the city they go to?
They definitely go to Anne Place in this.
Anyway, so this is script by Dan Abnett, art by Richard Ellison, letters by Jim Campbell. This is another thing where I was thinking like gone but not forgotten, because like you remember how we were saying when we were discussing Dan Abnett, like I did a comic that we both really liked called Feral and Foe.
Yes.
And like here it is again.
Yeah, we set it up in the previous episode and here it is.
We had did you have any idea it was coming back?
Yes. At the end of the battle action thing, it told you what was coming next on the last page.
But like when we were talking about it, did you have any idea?
That's a recent memory, so I don't have much memories of it. I'm going to say yes.
But also I was saying like, hey, remember this as a theme, because the whole first page of Feral and Foe here is just the character Bode, I think I said before he was a necromancer, he just appears to be a wizard.
He's like a very evil wizard.
He's like a battle mage.
Yeah, like he's a sort of necrotic guy himself.
Yeah, but like the very first page is just him explaining what Feral and Foe is.
Yeah, do you want to explain to the viewers what Feral and Foe is off the top of your head? Or
I probably should do, because it's boring if I just read the comic out.
Yeah.
But so Feral and Foe, there was a war at some point between like who you would generally like stereotype as the good guys in a fantasy setting.
A fantasy war.
They're humans, and then there's like monstery guys who are like green or necromancy types.
They seem to be adjacent to the standard fantasy races, kind of.
And the standard fantasy races who like are maybe a little bit bad guy coded, they lost the war. I think they were fighting for the Murder Lords.
The Murder Lord. I've got a lot of questions because I don't remember how the last like run of this ended.
Well, I can get into that because
once you've explained the thing, we're getting to it. Yeah.
Fair enough. So anyway. So the Murder Lord lost the war, and in order to be allowed to exist in the continuing society by the like human race,
the winners of the war,
the people that fought for the Murder Lord had to basically sign contracts where they were saying like, we will hunt down our own in the service of the crown.
Yeah,
and they hunt down ferals and foes, so monsters and like
foes of the crown.
Foes of the crown. And they call them like a writ taker or something. Yeah, the monarchy's special writ, he says. and they have to be branded so that you can tell that they're working for the right people.
One of the characters shows off their brand during the story. It's a very good jumping on story, I would say. Like,
oh yeah,
like that first like half a page that's like, here, let me exposit the concept to you, and also he's exposing it to the bad guys in the story.
What happened in the previous story that I read, I think I didn't read the first part.
I have
of the
that
whole
now,
thing.
because that came with the magazine.
Yeah.
And we needed to give you that.
But I read the second part when it was running in 2000 AD, and what happened there was that there was a character who's no longer in this, who I would say is like the main character, and he was an orc-alike. I don't think he actually was called an orc, but like...
Does he
think of an orc.
Look like Captain Plunder?
In my memory of Captain Plunder from Sonic the Comic, he looks exactly like Captain Plunder.
Should say it's the same artist.
Yeah, it's the Richard Elson who worked on a lot of the main stories in Sonic the Comic as the artist.
Because he's, like, you say an orc, but I think back to that Feral Info guy and think of him as like a kind of walrus man orc thing.
He's got big tusky teeth and like a chunky general physique.
Yeah.
And his skin is like, it's not green, but it is like a colour that skin generally isn't. It's like maybe red or something.
Like a reddy beige?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Anyway, so he was like the main character in the previous story. And he's no longer in it. And what happened there was some kind of magical explosion and everybody got changed. So like the character here, Bode, his brain was swapped with the fighter girl. So, like, the fighter girl was in, like, an overweight mage's body and couldn't fight properly, and Bode, the magician, was in a fighter girl's body, and, like, I guess magic has something to do with your physique, so was unable to do magic.
Well, he's like a combat wizard that seems to need to be bloated and necrotic to do his magical stuff.
One of their other guys of their party had been killed in the magical explosion, and... if I were to make a bet, I would say that guy who was killed was probably the main character in the first run.
Yeah, it seems to be a theme of Feral Info, that they're losing people from their D&D team.
Yeah, and the orc guy seemingly had nothing changed about him.
Yeah.
As the story progressed, they went to a necromancer to try and find out what had happened, and they found out that something had changed about the main guy. The main guy's soul was missing.
Yeah.
And they went on some kind of adventure. They were looking for a magical chalice, which is still in play. Bode calls out that like it's grafted into his skull now.
It must have broke or something.
Magical
I've read
chalice.
those comics, but I don't remember.
I think it exploded.
Yeah.
And like maybe like a shrapnel from it went into his head. But turned out after the quest of the last like ongoing story that the main guy's soul wasn't missing. It had been swapped, and it had been swapped with the Murder Lord.
The Murder Lord. So, like, the lovely, like, sort of, not Ben Grimm, but, like, he's like a kind of orky, cheeky, chappy type character who's, like, your eyes in the story.
Yeah.
The Murder Lord.
And as soon as he realised this, he decided, well, I'd better get to murdering then.
Murdering and lording.
And immediately started fighting his friends, who fought back and won.
Did they kill him? I don't have any memories of that.
I think he's dead.
Yeah. That's a real shame, because, like, it was a good comic with him. Like, he was a good POV, and, like... I
liked Feral Info a lot when it was running the, I think, second part.
The second part, yeah.
This particular story, though, we've got Bode describing basically what we are, what's the kingdom, this whole thing with the war, that whole situation, and then he's describing that all to some orcs who he's going to be bounty hunting.
Some ferals and foes.
Ferals and foes.
You say orcs, are they meant to be like tree men?
Well, they've got tree-like heads, but I take that as orcs with the serial numbers filed on.
Oh, yes. But also, at one point, I want to say there's a tree pun that I really enjoyed. If, in fact, they are tree people.
I thought it was like horns or antlers.
At one point, when the characters are fighting them, one of the potentially tree men says, "Oh my gourd."
Okay.
And
that might just be like a pronunciation thing.
There's a lot of pronunciation in this comic as well. Like, there's a lot of regional dialects and swearing, and I love it.
Well, it's fantasy, so you get other English accents. Or Scottish accents if dwarfs are involved.
If dwarfs are involved. They sadly weren't in this issue.
So then we get an action scene. It's a pretty good D&D magical action scene. He's casting spells. There's like, he summons a giant hand.
Very much like Green Lantern. It's a giant green energy hand.
But also like the Dungeons & Dragons spell, Bigsby's magic hand.
Yeah, which again, it's got a spell name with the numbers filed off, because it's called out as someone's magic thumper or something.
Of shackling.
Yeah.
And then,
He does shadow clone Jiu-Jitsu?
He does shadow clones, which also could be the D&D spell Mirror Image. Mm-hmm. He inflates somebody, which, like, there probably is a D&D spell that does that.
There's certainly a fetish for that.
Very true. He explodes.
I really like that, because like it's a good 2-page fight where he's showing off all of his gimmicks, and also the tone setter of, like, he's doing D&D stuff. But it's grim, like it's grim fantasy, because there's a comedy shot of like a guy who's like blown up like a balloon, and then the next panel's a nice like kind of modesty cutaway where they don't actually show him exploding into bits; they just show the sort of splatter of it, and that makes the remaining orcs just say like "fuck this," like.
And they run away towards the woods where the other party member, who is a blue chainmail or chain-headed, like she, instead of like braids, it looks like hair, but she's just got chains coming from her head. And I can't tell if that's like a chain wig, like maybe it's armor, because like she's got a headband around it.
Yeah, so she could just be wearing chainmail, but it's coded as hair. Like, see the way it curls.
Exactly. Yeah, like it looks like her fantasy race is like blue people with chains coming out of their head.
I'd very much think of her as the dark elf.
Yeah, she's very dark elfy.
Yeah.
And again, it's great. Richard Elson is a great action artist, as is quite well on show here, because it's hard to make a sword fight look good in comics because it's static images. But he's got a lot of good things here, where like the panels show off like the individual like important motions in like the sword strikes. He's also added in a thing where there's like a wee loopy line to show the wave of motion. And like it's not just like sword swing, chop off. Sword
they call
swing,
them
block.
Directional devices.
Directional devices.
Devices. Also, the panel layout really complements it as well, because it's sliced into segments as she's slicing the not orcs into bits.
So that gives you a bit of an idea of what's going on. They take their the guys who they have killed for the bounty over to the Wretchfinder General.
Wretchfinder General.
Not the Witchfinder General.
Again, puns. It's a dynamic theme. It's a staple. And
turns out they had a bunch of treasure on them, and one of the treasure is what is quite clearly to me an iron golem, like you get in D&D.
Like you get in D&D. That iron golem made me think, because we've recently had a dynamic comic where like he crossed over, two of these things, like Azimuth and Sinister and Dexter. I was wondering, looking at the Iron Golem, because, like, yes, it's very much an Iron Golem, although it does look it has Darkseid's face.
It does look an awful lot like Darkseid.
And, like, no one knows what it is. Even the Wretchfinder General's like, I don't know what this is. We'll have to go and do a quest.
We'll have to go to Hogwarts.
We'll have to absolutely go to Hogwarts and find out what this is. And I was like, is this, like, a 2000 AD thing that we're meant to know? Or maybe be suspicious of? Or is it going to turn into like a sci-fi thing? Because
well, it could be a robot, but the reason why I'm calling it specifically Iron Golem is that it's got like a letter carved into its head, what a golem does.
Golems, of course, yeah.
You're supposed to put like the name of God into a golem's mouth or something. Don't you put in the mythology?
In the Jewish mythology, isn't it? Like you write what you want the golem to do, and then you put that info into its mouth.
Yes, but also like the name of God is like one of the things that you've got to have.
That's the code to activate the golem.
Because I guess God is animating it.
God is big into golems, apparently.
Well, golems are a weird thing because it's like a specific cultural, I was going to say subcultural, but it's like a specific cultural, like, folklore thing that has been very much internalized into just all nerd stuff.
Yeah.
So, like, but yeah, I think this is a golem.
He looks really cool. He's got little, like, elvish-looking arms with, like wavy patterns, and they're on his boots as well. And he looks quite cozy in that coffin, I feel. Like, he looks really nice and, like he's having a nice nap.
They are sent with, like, other members of a D&D party, so there's some more Wretchfinders that go with them, who I assume are going to die at some point.
Yeah, there is a couple of interactions that I want to call out, because the Wretchfinder General has, like, this eager young swat.
Pink-haired.
Pink, is it, she got pink hair?
She might be grey, but it looks pink to me.
I'm going to say she's got grey haired, and it's the same interaction between Sister Michael from Derry Girls and the SWAT character there, because she's like really like eager.
I was not expecting Derry Girls to get.
Well, that's what I got from it, because like the Wretchfinder General's like calling her out that you're trying to suck up to me, and also trying to steal my job. I like that about you. Like it's like acknowledging that she's a monster.
I think the quote from Derry Girls is like the Jenny Joyce rats out the main characters, and Sister Michael is going like, "You will go far in life, Jenny Joyce, but you will not be liked."
Exactly. That is the exact tone that I took from that interaction.
Fair enough. So quite obviously flagging this character up as the villain.
Yeah.
The Wretchfinder. What's her name? Doesn't really matter. I'm sure we'll find out once it becomes important.
It seems like she'll fuck them over immediately.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Or be responsible for like the whole bad things that are going on in the first place as some kind of like ploy to oust the Wretchfinder General.
But he's into that. He's into the ambition and like sheer like capitalist drive of this. And like it's conveyed in the panel. Like see that one panel of her just like looking directly at us? Manic.
Oh, yeah. The team that they get saddled with, so there's some more guys in like the golden armour of the crown, the kingdom. And they've got a replacement orc, although he looks less like an orc than the other ones.
He's a proprietary orc, isn't he? Like he's blue this time.
He's blue and he hasn't got tusky teeth, but he's got the same like tree-like head. But like, if this were a D&D game, I would say this is the player that was playing the orc last time has got an NPC that he's taking over so that he can still use the same character sheet as a different character.
There's a thing in like when people talk about 80s comics, because you know how there was the big fantasy boom in the 80s, and people would just convert their actual D&D game into a comic. Like they would use their D&D game as the basis and they would just make that their comic.
That's absolutely what the Dragonlance novel started out as.
Do you think that's what's happening here? Do you think this is Dan Abnett's game?
Very much could be.
It gives me that impression.
There's also a guy who, to me, looks like a hobgoblin, but they say that he's a Drake born or something.
He's a Dragonborn equivalent.
Yeah.
And we know that because they get into the conversation about how they're sired.
It's another pun name, Draconatal.
Oh.
He's a Draconatal combat mage.
Oh, he's a combat mage. I don't think I picked up.
They said he's a combat mage. He does have armor and a really big sword.
Okay.
But he's a great fancy character design. I don't really have much to say about him other than that he doesn't look like a Dragonborn. He looks like a hobgoblin.
They have a funny interaction about like was your mum or dad the dragon?
Yeah.
And like I feel like I like him from his response.
It's like, that's personal. Fuck off.
But he answers it in like steps. He's like, well, actually, and then the second thing, and then the third one is, but fuck off.
And then we have that scene from Lord of the Rings where they're walking somewhere and the music is playing, and we see where they're going, and they're just walking into a Dark Souls level.
It very, very much looks like a Dark Souls level.
The place that we refer to as Hogwarts is Godesburg, not Godsburg. Godesburg. There's an E in it.
Godesburg.
And it's very dilapidated looking. There's a big fantasy door that is clearly some degree of ruined. The sky is red behind it.
The sky is fiery red, which is never a good sign.
And this is like the seat of all magical knowledge of the, like, supposedly good guys. Mm-hmm. Like, they're talking about how there's, like, a kind of light magic and a dark magic that, like, the humans only practice light magic. I think it's, like, the dark magic is studied here as well, they say. So,
it's their, like, special intelligence branch type thing. They call it out as like their MI5 or whatever.
But like this place looks like some bad shit has gone down. And in fact, when they get there, the big fancy door creaks open, and a peasant-looking guy comes out saying, "Oh, thank feck you're here." Shout out to the word feck.
There's a lot of feck in this comic.
Have we got problems? !
This is a good adventure hook for your D&D party.
Absolutely.
You've got them together. You've dealt with your previous loose ends being tied up, and now go to this place to do a thing. Here's an NPC that's going to give you quests.
Yeah. It's a bit point A to point B, I would say, but I don't think that it needs to be anything more than that. I really enjoyed this.
I really enjoyed it. It's a good setup issue. It's like, here's what we are, here's what we do.
Yeah.
Also, here's 2 to 3 pages of a fight, which is a key, I think.
And a very good fight, I would say.
Very good, very memorable fight. That guy exploded. Really. I really liked it for whatever reason. But yeah, you need that, because like a lot of these are going to be setup issues, and like you can front load the exposition and then have nae fight. And I'm not saying that every 2-card comic needs a fight, but it does benefit from one.
And it was very much a stock fight as well, because it was literally just like doing some bounty hunting.
Yeah, killed 5 rats. Yeah. But in a way that expressed the characters and show
all the powers.
Here's why maybe you, a teen or a child, would like this comic, because there's this orc-looking guy that can make people explode. It's good selling of their gimmicks. Anything else that stuck out to you? Just the total use of feck and the different British dialects, which is, I think, a running thing for Feral Info.
Third comic is Helium, Scorched Earth #1. This was script by Ian Edgington, art by Disraeli.
I say it as Disraeli as well.
That's the name of a old British Prime Minister, Benjamin Disraeli.
Yeah, I was wondering why it was triggering vague recollections in my brain.
Yeah. And letters by Simon Boland.
I believe this is...
No any Parkhouse so far, but we've had a lot of... I think we've had a couple of Simon Bolands, actually.
Maybe she was tied up with the Battle Action issue, which was quite a lot of words.
Possibly.
I think this is the... the team who previously did the War of the Worlds thing, which
It looks like that.
I'm skipping on the name of...
So am I, actually.
I had something Traces, Scarlet Traces?
Scarlet Traces, yeah.
Scarlet Traces. I think and maybe that's why it took 8 years to come back, because
they were doing Scarlet Traces.
They were doing Scarlet Traces.
Maybe so. Helium is a comic which I read 8 years ago, apparently.
Do you have good memories of 8 years?
I do have good memories. I thought it was good at the time. I thought at the time, and still think, that it is basically a comic directly inspired by BioShock Infinite.
Ooh, okay. I didn't think you were going to go... That wasn't something I thought you were going to pull there, but...
Well, what the thing with Helium is the setting is very sort of... I don't know, maybe turn of the century, like going into 1900.
Pre-World War One?
Pre-World War One, maybe around World War
One.
There's blimps, and the war that has happened in the backstory... is effectively World War One, because the big problem was poisonous gas.
Yes,
They gassed the whole world.
So much gas that the entire planet's covered in a smog.
A layer of smog that kills everything. So the place where humans live is this, I think it's like a flying city above the clouds. So BioShock Infinite.
A biodome.
It's less American than BioShock Infinite, but I was pretty sure that the writer had played BioShock Infinite.
BioShock Infinite was 2013, so if it was 8 years ago, that would be a couple of years into it. And...
Well, it was more in my mind then than it would have been if this was the first time I'd seen Helium. But also BioShock Infinite, look at this guy here.
Yes.
So he was a character in the first run as well, and he is a guy who looks like robot Abraham Lincoln. He's got a big clank old-style robot body with Popeye proportions.
He's very Popeye, I was going to say.
Yeah, he's got big forearms and booty feet, and he's got a human face.
Yeah,
there was an enemy type in BioShock Infinite. I think they were called the Handymen, that had a slightly more sort of bulked out version of a similar character design to this.
He does look like what if RoboCop happened in a Popeye cartoon.
Yeah.
Which is maybe why I find him unnerving. It's his thighs that are just tubes. He's just got lined thighs, and oh no, but there's a person bit in there. What I got from this, from not having read Helium before and not making the BioShock connection, was H.G. Wells stuff.
Oh yeah, but also that was part of the
BioShock
Infinite thing.
I played BioShock Infinite once, many years after it came out, and never went back to it because I died and it sent me back many hours, and I was just fuck that.
I played it all in one night with a group of friends getting drunk. And I remember quite liking it, but maybe being slightly disappointed that it wasn't more of an RPG. I don't know.
That's a usual problem, isn't it?
What happens in this? So we open on a scene of a doctor educating a classroom of, I think, the royal family. This whole thing is flashback, as we will come to learn.
I didn't know that, going in. It didn't feel like a flashback until it was.
They didn't call it out until it did, but
as a new reader with no connection to Helium.
As they must assume most people will be if it hasn't been running for 8 years.
Absolutely.
Tharg does call out that this is the first appearance of Helium since the airship that the main characters were in was crashing.
Yeah.
So that comes in later on. But so it's classroom. learning about the lore of the setting, and specifically about how there's the smog and there are like goblins outside of the domed city, or are there?
Brings up goblins specifically, which I'm like, I might see some goblins. Smog goblins.
And how like some animals can survive in the poisonous environment.
But they're poor, twisted wretches.
But then the plot breaks down the door.
Yes.
As handyman Popeye comes crashing in, Robot Abraham Lincoln, carrying the wounded emperor or king or something.
I was going to say Tsar.
Tsar,
because
that was it.
The first couple of pages where we're learning the backstory, I was like, this is very like Tsar, because they're like the princess.
I think he actually is the Tsar.
Yeah, because I had that thought, and then Robot Abraham Lincoln was like, the Tsar has been shot. And I was like, okay, so like this is just the Russian Revolution then?
It is just the Russian Revolution. They're like, what's going on? How did this happen? And they're like, they're everywhere. Who's everywhere? Cooks, peasants. And so like, cut to the Russian Revolution. Just happens in the space of like a second.
The Russian Revolution breaks down the door.
And then, like, confusingly, the doctor who was literally just teaching the kids seconds ago is one of the revolutionaries.
He was talking about, like, the will of the Tsar, like the will of God, basically.
Yeah, and he's like, kings and queens only belong in fairy tales. And he just has a submachine gun.
I really like that panel. That panel, it's such like a comedy cartoon Uzi. And he's putting the stock against his chest. Like, it's such a good... Like, where did he pull it from?
Where is that gun before this point?
Was it in his teaching desk?
Does he just carry an Uzi in case?
Like, yeah, like...
In case of revolution, break glass. And he just guns down women and children.
And Abraham Lincoln.
Which,
because I was shocked. This, as a new reader, shocked, because I didn't realise this was flashback. I didn't understand what was going on. I was like, that's an interesting character design to just blow the head off of. Like, this is very shocking and very like, where's this going?
It's an interesting shot as well, because like they show you the line of the bullet and it ricochets off of his robot arm into the back of his head, and then from the back of his head clearly changes path again. So I guess he's got a metal head under his skin.
Well, yeah, I guess they're setting up for like the reveal that he's not dead.
Yeah, because
spoilers on the next page.
He's not dead. He gets up and he throws the guy somewhere
into some boxes, I reckon.
Like, there's I was going to say a well animated, but it's not animated. There's like a bit where you can see him picking the doctor up and throwing him, and I thought he'd be throwing him out a window, but he doesn't. He's just not in the comic after that.
Just some boxes off screen. That's him dealt with. Maybe he's throwing him into some water, and like that'll be him dealt with.
I didn't note this when I was reading it the first time, but like you can actually quite clearly see that he doesn't have metal under his skin because his brain's out there.
I think there's some metal in his brain. Like this bit here is like computery, so maybe that deflected it. But like his brain is leaking out the back of his head.
Yeah.
Whilst he's comforting the dying Tsar wife,
the
Tsarina. And children who have been oozed to death by this teacher.
Except for the actual baby, who we then find in the two very last panels is the main character from the previous thing. And we're now like, this has all been a flashback to like the shot of their airship collapsing.
And presumably it's a flashback that the Robocop Popeye man is having, because she's like telling him to like get it together.
I thought this was quite good. I thought it looked quite nice. There's a lot of politics at play here.
Oh, well, yes, because like when I was reading it, I was like, do you want me to feel bad for the Tsars? Like, are the Tsar, the princess of the Tsar is the main character of your comic?
I think this is where like our political tendency is going to like show its differences, because I do feel bad for the princesses of the Tsar.
We probably should feel bad for the children, at least. But like, it's a weird...
This is why I would be opposed to violent revolution.
Yes, just putting that on out there. The thing is, it's not just like this is a fantasy thing.
Yeah,
but they are the Tsar. Like either they're not, like they're called out as the Tsar. Like he is the Tsar.
He's the Tsar,
and this is like
the Tsar that you know of as Tsar Nicholas II, who is the reason why that revolution happens.
Yes, but like. It's bad. It's good to feel bad about children dying. That's a comment that might need to get clipped out of context. But it is good to feel bad. You know, you should feel bad that children die. That's a natural response.
Yeah.
But this is a comic where you've decided to make these characters, and then presumably go on to be the main character of the comic. You read the previous thing though.
I did.
I have got questions. Is she very Tsar-y?
No, she's not. So
there you go.
I think this is one of the things where like they're they're sort of giving you some explanation. Like, if you have been reading the comic this whole time, it gives you some explanations as to why things are the way they are.
Yeah.
I can't remember if we knew she was the princess or not.
Okay.
But, like, we knew she was traveling around with a robot man. And, like, she clearly seemed like she was, like, maybe more important than she seemed. But, like, I don't
So this could be the reveal that she was...
Yeah, I can't remember very well, because it was 8 years ago. Maybe it was more apparent than I'm remembering. But, like, yeah, this is definitely, like, explaining why we were where we were, I think.
Yeah, it works a lot. It's not. I don't think it's as good as a intro as the Feral and Foe, but like it caught me up to speed, having never read a Helium thing in my life. I like the character designs. I already like the art style, because if it is indeed the Scarlet Traces people, I really enjoyed the art style on Scarlet Traces. That said, how do you feel about this drawing of the main character as a baby in like a little bundle?
Well, I think it looks really weird, but they're clearly doing it so that it has visual similarity to the next panel, where like she is a grown, like, I don't know, girl more than woman, but still.
So you think it's meant to be freaky? You think it's meant to be like a woman's head on a baby body?
Definitely is, because if you look at the other panels that have the baby in them, it doesn't have that haircut.
Ah, of course, yes. Well, that's good then, because I got to that panel, because like the RoboCop man is holding this baby burrito in his RoboCop hand, and she's...
His massive hand that makes the baby look like, as you say, a burrito, but like also...
Maybe smaller than a burrito is the thing, like... Yeah, in an animated thing or like a live action thing, that would be the cut between... Yeah. I just remember seeing that panel and being freaked out about it, and I've thought about it since then, and like, it's been on my mind, like, that panel, But like you're right, like it definitely is doing the good job of conveying the shock and the freakiness. And
yeah, whether or not it did that as well as anything possibly could have, we could argue that. Like, there might have been a better method to achieve the effect.
Well, I didn't get it, but I think that's because I'm dumb. I think they set out to do a thing and achieved the thing they were setting out to do.
Yeah.
I am excited for the next issue. Like that I want to see what happens. I like the world that's, as I keep saying, as a new reader to Helium, the world that's set up in this thing, I find quite exciting. Recently, I found myself wanting to read like H.G. Wells stuff, because like...
I'll believe it when I see it.
Yeah, I know. I don't think there's going to be space marines in it.
No.
But like, I like, how it's all like expeditions and lost worlds and like airships and stuff. But like, here it is in toucan, where it'll be fun and readable and...
Yeah. I absolutely believe that you could do that if you put your mind to it, but like, there have been multiple times when you've said, I'm going to start reading this book, and you've read the first chapter.
Hey, right. I feel like you're specifically calling me out on that time I tried to read Day of the Triffids. And to my credit, I didn't understand that Day of the Triffids was the bleakest thing that humanity's ever put to paper.
Maybe so. Anyway, this isn't a Day of the Triffids podcast.
Pay us on Patreon if you want us to go through chapter by chapter Day of the Triffids, and I just wail in the background as like mothers gas their children because they're blind now.
Anyway, moving on to something a little bit less bleak.
A little bit less bleak and a bit more fun.
So next up we have Judge Dredd versus Robo Hunter. Script by Garth Ennis, big name comic man Garth Ennis.
Enos is back.
Art by Henry Flint, and legends by Rob Steen.
So no Annie Parkhouse.
No Annie Parkhouse this issue, I think.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
Maybe she'd jump off. Like, she's no longer on the comic as far as we know.
Maybe it was her holiday week, I don't know.
Probably.
Anyway, so this is old character from 2080, Robo Hunter Sam Slade, and he has taken out a contract to hunt down a robot because he's a Robo Hunter. Apparently that's the thing he does.
Did you know that he was a Dreadverse character?
I'm still not sure if he is.
Yeah.
Because, like, he is in this story.
Yeah.
But, like...
This story did a good enough job to convince me that he is. But, like you say, I don't know. I've never sat down and read a prog with Robo Hunter in it and, like, fully read through the story.
I have, but like, it's always been, as I said, one of those, like, special guest appearances from Robo Hunter.
I got 90s ones recently that have Robo Hunter in it, but it's, like, written by Mark Millar, and I just couldn't. Like,
I've read Mark Millar comics I've liked.
I have as well, but like it was a combination of like the art and like Mark Millar and it being a 90s thing. I'm sure like he's like a classic 70s or 80s character that has like a golden era run or whatever, but I've never seen any of that.
Yeah, me too.
So he might like write in. We need to be educated on this because like they might just be like kayfabing or whatever, saying like he because they do that. They do like have Strontium Dog be in the like Dredd universe, even though that makes no sense from what I've read of Strontium Dog. So
well, like I always thought that was a thing because I know from Tharg in the Battle Action issue last time that Strontium Dog started in a different comic.
Yeah.
But I thought that he'd been incorporated in a way where, like, he was in the future from Dredd's time.
But it doesn't make any sense because, like, the future should be even more abstract than...
Yeah.
It can't... Like, in Strontium Dog, there's named British places that, like, can't... There's no Britset. Like, it's...
Speaking of Britset, apparently that's where Robo Hunter lives.
He's from Mega City 1.
He's from Mega City 1, but now operates in Britset.
Which... The way they talk about that in this issue, because they talk about him having some previous stuff in Mega City 1.
Yeah, it takes a while for them to say that he was in Mega City 1.
Yeah.
But like when they said he's from Britsit, I started looking at him and I was like, I could see this guy speaking in a Cockney accent, actually. But that sort of makes more sense to me now.
To me, right, and correct me on this, but to me, he looks like your man from the Dirty Harry films, can't think of his name right
Eastwood.
now. He looks like Clint Eastwood playing a Mario brother.
I thought he looked like Han Solo with the serial numbers filed off.
Oh yeah, like he's got a little waistcoat in that. But like, see the hat and like the hair, because he's very Clint Eastwood. I imagine they're probably trying to draw Clint Eastwood.
Specifically with him having his e-cigarette robot, he looks a bit like Clint Eastwood doing The Man with No Name.
Yeah. But he's got like bright red trousers, like Santa would.
Yeah, he looks like a character design from the 70s.
Yeah. See the first panel, which is a splash page panel.
Yeah,
great. Love it.
Pretty good. The art is good.
It's not a lying cover, Michael, because the cover is like Robo Hunter shooting at, or like pulling his gun on Walter the Woobot.
Well, he shoots Walter the Woobot in the head, and Walter remains shot in the head for the rest of the issue. He's not dead though. He's chipping in with bits to say the whole time, but like he's just lying there, being like, "Oh no, I have been shot.
I've been shot." Quipes.
We should talk about Walter.
Mm-hmm.
So, as I've saying before, when I was reading old 2000 AD that my mum had when Dredd was in his like 20s, Walter was his like C-3PO.
Yeah.
He was like a comedy character that was hanging around Dredd's house whenever Dredd went to his house. Also, Dredd had a house.
He had a house.
I don't think you ever see Dredd's house anymore.
I think he sleeps at the barracks or whatever at the...
Yeah, but like he was living in a flat. He had a landlady.
He had a landlady who's in this, I believe, as well.
If that's the same character.
It must be, right?
Well, I think it probably is, but I don't know for sure. And Walter was like his manservant who was a droid.
It's part of that old, like, weird 2000 AD stuff where, like, cops existed.
Yeah.
You know? Like, they hadn't hashed everything out yet.
Walter is a woobot because he speaks in a comedy way where every R he says is a W.
He's got a lisp.
And he's robot.
I like him.
I like him a lot.
Yeah.
Pops up from time to time. Like there was some special not too long ago where I think it was a Regend actually, where there was a Walter the Woobot story where he was becoming a stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
Managed by other longtime Dredd silly character Max Normal.
Yeah, Max Normal.
I don't know. I feel like the silliness in Dredd turns up like less regularly. I mean, like Dredd should kind of be serious.
Yeah,
mostly.
He's the straight man in the silly world.
But there are a lot of silly things from old Judge Dredd that I do love quite a lot, and Walter is one of them.
I think the silliness works. See, for the original stuff, because it's just going like that. They present it like this is the world.
Yeah,
like he's got a robot, he's got a lisp. Like, it's just part of the silly, fun comic.
When he gets shot on the first page, he says quipes.
He does, and, like, I feel it.
Like, cripes is a silly enough thing to say in 2023, but he's lisping cripes.
He's a robot that is a Beano character.
He very much is a Beano character. So, like, what happens in this bloody story?
I think it's important to say, right, this is the title story. Like, this is the
cover. This is the, as you said in the Hershey issue, the main event.
This is the main event, and it's the last thing in the comics, the last thing they read. You build up the whole prog to it.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this is giving too much away to just fire into this, but this is a gag strip.
Yeah, it is. Much like I love that one Azimuth, one single joke.
It's one single joke, hit all the beats. Like, it's very good. Like, it builds up to one joke, and I think all the jokes on the way to the joke are good.
Yes. And I appreciate the joke. I saw the joke coming from a mile away.
Oh my god, as soon as I started reading the comic, like the punchline was there.
Absolutely.
I don't think that necessarily... I think that would normally take away from the punchline. But I think it still works, even when you feel it coming.
I think it works. I didn't like it that much.
Maybe I like it more because it's the main event and it's a gag comic.
I like it a lot less because it's the main event and it's a gag comic.
See if it was like because it's.
Let's discuss the actual joke. Yeah. So Walter gets shot by the Robo Hunter. The woman who owns Walter is like, oh, you've shot my robot, what's going on?
Yeah.
She also comedically, like, constantly gets Sam Slade's name wrong and is, like, calling him, like, Mr. Slut at one point.
I don't think that's great, but the first thing she says, because, he turns up and says, oh, I've got, like, a bounty for your robot. He led a revolution in Britsit. And, like, the thing that she mishears and says about that is pretty good.
So, read a revolution in Britsit, and she thinks that he said, red revolting hardcore in shit sit.
That's the one thing that she says that I think was funny and got a laugh out of me, and then she keeps doing that one joke for the rest of it, and that's a weaker part of it. She's old!
She's old and she can't hear or see very well.
She's got mole man goggles.
After Walter has been shot, but not killed, he's just sitting there being like, oh, you just watched, Judge Dredd will come to save me, we're such good friends. And Dredd gets a call to say, thought you should know, a Robo Hunter has turned up, like, saying that he's going to go after this robot that you've apparently got a connection to.
It might even be, like, turned up at the place you used to live.
Yeah.
Like your old address.
Dredd motors on over there. We cut back to Walter. The old lady has just made Sam Slade a cup of tea, and they're just sitting there waiting for Dredd, talking about how he's a Robo Hunter.
All that, they're talking about it, and, like, the judges talk about Robo Hunters like their thing, which makes me convinced that it is.
It might be.
But, like, that could just be good integration work for all I know.
Well, why would you need Robo Hunters in?
There was a big there was a huge revolution.
Yeah,
there's been multiple robot uprisings. It might have, like, spawned out of that.
But, like, they didn't get rid of the robots. They're still about. Like,
but they could.
Your favorite thing from that Asher story was that the robots were just dudes.
I really love those dude robots. They might go rogue occasionally, and maybe that's why they needed them. And maybe it was more of a thing in the 70s or 80s.
It absolutely could be, but also it might not be. We
don't know. It's well written to the point where we can't tell.
We get a bit of flashback to Dredd living with Walter, as, like, in case you didn't know, this is a historical character.
Really loved that shot of them on the moon.
Dredd walks in, and the punchline is that, like, it's been building up this whole time, that, like, Dredd's coming, oh, there's going to be such a fight, oh, these two characters.
It's the main event, like, we're selling you this comic on...
These two characters that are, like, you know so well, and they're so tough, and have never crossed paths, how's it going to go? Partially spoiled by the fact that there's, like, one page after this point.
That is because, like, the pacing of the story does ruin the fact, because, like, once you get through it, you're like, oh, there's only one page left.
And the joke is, Dredd turns up, and he's like, Sam Slade, and they're like, yeah, that's me. You're, like, here to, like, bounty hunt Walter the Robot. And he's like, yep. And he's like, I'll need to see your paperwork, please.
Yep.
Sam Slade's like, yes, sir, here you go. Dredd looks at it, and he's like, yes, this all seems in order. Goodbye, sir.
Goodbye.
And that's it. And, like, that is a joke that is constructed out of, like, the things that exist in Dredd's character, where, like, yeah, if you did have the proper paperwork,
like we were saying,
he would absolutely be fine with it.
If you're an innocent, he has an innocent in his eyes, no problem with you. If you filed the correct paperwork, he has no issue. If you litter, he'll beat you to death. But because, like, he gets like a little bit in where, like, he has that e-cig and he's like, oh, is that nicotine? He does,
call out the nicotine. There are a couple of points in this that I did quite like, but overall, maybe it was ruined for me by me knowing Dredd too well. Because, like,
you knew that.
I knew he was going to check his paperwork and see that everything was in order and not care.
Yeah.
Like, from moment one, that's absolutely where the story was always going to go.
I think it's probably ruined because, like, if you're a fan of Dredd, you can probably see that come. But that's the thing we like. We like to see Dredd be a petty fuck.
This story needs to turn up sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Not necessarily in exactly this form, but, like, I think I've said before, my favourite thing, like, the example of Judge Dredd in my mind is something from my mum's 2080 annuals, where there was a chase and a citizen, like, caught the criminal that Dredd was chasing and said, like, oh, I've placed him under citizen's arrest, Judge. And then Judge Dredd went, citizen's arrests are illegal, citizen. I'm placing you under arrest.
Yes.
Doesn't matter if you're helping him. Doesn't matter if it's for the greater good. You have committed a crime. I'm giving you the maximum sentence.
Go to the cubes.
Yeah.
I think I laugh, right? I thought the jokes were good, mid to good to solid. It being a single joke comic.
Yeah.
That was advertised as the main event, I think is funny. It's not necessarily anything, but, like, you've got that big cover. There was build up on, like, social media being like, oh, who's Dredd going to fight? It's a 2000 AD classic. And then, like, this is your jumping on Prog. Like, this is your, like, come back old readers that have lapsed Prog. And
I guess so. I mean, like, it's too well telegraphed, like, what it's going to be. Because, for one thing, it is Robo Hunter.
Yeah.
And, like, I've never read a Robo Hunter comic that isn't, like, a one-off joke thing.
Yeah.
Like, maybe, like we keep saying, maybe there was a time when, like, there really was a serious character.
Listeners, point us to a good Robo Hunter arc.
But, like, it's Robo Hunter, so it's going to be some nonsense.
Yeah.
And, like, they're making a big deal about how Judge Dredd's going to come and get you, so he won't.
Yeah.
And, I don't know. It's fine. There are bits about it that I really liked. I should say as well, like, they like, suck out Walter's, like, robot soul into a disc.
They download him.
Which... Is this the end of Walter the Robot? Like, should there be an in memoriam splash page on the back of this prog as well?
I don't know.
I might be more upset if Walter is dead going forward than if Hershey is.
I'm 1,000% with you. He can't die, he's a robot. He'll just have Britsit adventures. He'll fit in perfectly in Britsit.
His soul is in a disc, so he's not dead. But
it's a disc that looks like a toilet bowl. It's an odd...
It looks like the Dragon Radar from Dragon Ball.
It really does, doesn't it? Yeah. And, like, Dredd calls it out as, like, something he should pass along to the text. Like, they don't do that with their robots in Mega City 1. Which maybe that's a clue to, like, Robo Hunter not being set in it. But a couple things before we finish on this story. The flashback to year 1 of Judge Dredd where they hung out on the moon. Young Dredd, like, he's a different body type, and, like, it's a profile shot, so you can't necessarily see it, but he's not got the gnarled, desperate Dan.
He does definitely look younger.
So that's good, like, consistency work.
Yeah.
And the art was good. I liked it.
The only moment that I'll call out in this as being, like, really cool is when Dredd actually, like, walks in the door. And we get a bit of Sam Slade's internal monologue, Robo Hunter's internal monologue, and he's just saying... there are guys you hear about, guys with a killer... that's actually Walter, because he doesn't say a killer rep, he says a killer wep.
Oh, but that is Robot Hunter. He corrects himself.
Oh, yes.
Because he's been listening to Walter the whole time, and he's internalised it.
Okay, that's also a good individual gag.
Good gag.
So, guys with a killer rep. And the day comes when you meet them face to face, and you look at them in the eye, and they're no big deal. It's all mouth and no trousers, a complete disappointment. And then the next panel, just Dredd's face... This was not one of those days.
Yeah, that was good work. I really enjoyed that.
That was cool.
That was a good meeting of characters. That was a good, like, character-to-character interaction, even though they didn't say anything to each other.
Yeah.
The other thing, Walter being dead, because I was going to say it and then I didn't. I don't know where this fits in continuity, and if indeed it does fit in continuity, I don't necessarily care all that much about two-cad continuity as much as I would care about, like, Superman continuity or whatever. It's not...
No, for sure.
Not something I invested in that much.
I do care to some extent about the Judge Dredd continuity, but you can absolutely do things that are, like, questionable continuity.
Questionable, and, like, I believe the little blurb at the front, the blurb box calls it out as, like, 22nd century or whatever. It doesn't put, like, an specific date. A year. So, like, is it happening concurrent with Hershey being dead stuff or not? It's a fun wee gag story.
Before we get to the rankings, you wanted to say something about the adverts at the end.
The adverts in the end are a very good use of adverts because it's a jumping on thing, because this is specifically calling out, if you liked this issue...
If you maybe want to read Helium and don't want to look for comics from 8 years ago...
It's free. Yep. You can download Helium right now, the first book, whatever the first part of it is, for free.
Helium Book 1.
And there's a little QR code right there, so you can just get it on your phone. There's no... It's painless. And I love this. Like, comics should do this all the time. Like, American comics in particular, where it's like a big long run, or like if you want them to like follow a creator or whatever. Probably rights issues or whatever, but like, just go, like, I'll do that. I'll go read Helium and like, I'll get up to speed on it. And the other ones aren't as good as that, but because it's just like, here's the trade paperbacks of the things.
Well, there's like Feral and Foe, Book 1, and Hershey, I think.
It's Hershey and all the smiley stuff. Yeah. So like, here's everything that we've talked about, everything we've
might actually be worth me getting that just to work out what the fuck is going on.
I want the mystique of Judge Smiley to, because he probably wasn't anything. Like, he's probably just a guy.
It might be disappointing, with all of like how big of a character he has been.
His name is Smiley. Like, it's great. He's like a Mr. Man. But yeah, I just think this is a good... Because you get this. You get like ads where it's like, you like this thing, jump in it. But like specifically calling out, here's a thing you can download for free that's one of these comics. Just go do it. And I think that's the end of the prog, really. That's the
Fair enough. Yeah. Well, last
Rankings.
week you did the rankings first. This week I'll do the rankings first, and it's quite easy for me to do because I was looking at this ahead of time, and my rankings are the exact order that the comics run in the prog.
Ooh, do you want to read them out for the benefit of
So
listeners?
number 1, Judge Dredd.
Yep.
Number 2, Feral and Foe. Number 3, Helium, and number 4, Judge Dredd versus Robo Hunter. I feel like you're going to disagree with me on that based on what we were saying, and I know that that David from Boys from the Pod disagreed with that very strongly. Not that I had revealed my rankings before this point, I didn't, but...
Get them close to your chest.
I don't think you liked Poison very much.
It's not bad.
From what we're talking. We've already discussed, I'll just say like my reasons. I just like Judge Dredd. I thought it was like a good... It got me excited for where the story was going to go. I liked the whole bit about Judge Dredd really respecting Hershey, actually, and the art was good, and it just caught me. Feral and Foe was overall maybe actually a better comic than this Judge Dredd, but a lot of the time was taken up by, hey, readers who haven't read this before or have forgotten, here's what the thing is, and that was well done and I think necessary, but it's not the most exciting comic fare, so I'd place it very slightly below the Dredd story. Helium, I thought the whole bit about murdering a bunch of children made me feel a little bit squicky. But
it was the panel is
the murder panel.
Yeah, I didn't notice that the first time through
in the blurb. But I still thought it was very good. Like we've said before, just because I'm ranking something in the lower half doesn't mean I thought it was bad.
This is tongue in cheek. We're not. Yeah.
I would say I would give Dredd versus Robo Hunter a very low score though. It didn't do anything for me.
There was good gags. Yeah. There was good gags. I mean, so you're the order that it came in. I would go probably Feral and Foe.
Valid, I think.
Feral and Foe I thought was a very good... it was the best jumping on segment of the prog. It was, here's what we are, here's what we do visually, and here's what we're going to do. And I enjoyed the dialogue. I enjoyed...
Can't argue with that at all.
Enjoyed the setup. I would go Dredd after that, I believe.
Okay.
Dredd after that. I don't think it was bad, and I liked the art a lot. I just didn't necessarily feel, personally, the need or the connection. You talked me around with your talk about him being autistic and not showing that he liked Hershey, but I didn't. Going from that Hershey to that, I didn't feel the need for the Dredd. But I understand it completely, and I think it's a smart follow-up to that story and for new readers, and it's good. I just probably sounded a lot. I did say a lot of negative things, but I don't have malice in my heart for it.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
And then Helium, which I'm very excited to see do airship things, and I think it was a fun revolutionary start to the comic, and it had murdering of children in it. How can you? And then I would agree that Robo Hunter was probably the weakest thing.
That's what I believe David from Boys from the Pod put as his number 1.
Ooh, well, I mean. He's just getting that thrill power.
He's getting his first dose.
His first dose of petty Arnold Rimmer Dredd checking people's papers. That can be overwhelming. I mean, if this was my first prog going into it, I'd be like, oh my god, he checked his papers. This is amazing.
Maybe so.
This is everything I want from a comic. We talked about the line cover.
Yeah,
and I want to potentially float a new topic to you. Does the cover story deserve to be the cover story? We can do it in the rankings because I feel like it's related.
Yes, I think so, because it's a one-off. It's not going to get another chance at it. It helps sell the joke.
It is the main event. It is the reason why some people might be picking up this comic.
I think that you could make a good argument for any of the stories getting the cover.
Helium back after 8 years.
Back after 8 years. Yeah. Feral and Foe back after not 8 years, but still a thing you might be into that's back.
You could have a sad picture of Dredd mourning the statue of Hershey.
Absolutely. Recently dead Hershey.
Maybe not a good feature for this issue, but I bet there'll be progs where we're like, why did this get the cover when this thing happened in the comic? And
yeah, that's not a bad idea. We'll do that going forward.
We should call out our various people that made this possible.
Absolutely. We now, since the last recording, have actually put out podcasts.
Yes.
I think only one so far. There's another one in development.
We have many wheels spinning.
And I have been really quite touched by how much people have been helping us. So a huge thank you to Callum, who has been our Editor Callum.
Editor Callum.
You've really done great work in making this an actual show.
Yep.
Also, huge thanks to Jessica, who has designed the logo for Prog Slog.
That's Jessica Kate,
Fine Art. Go and check out her stuff, please, because I really like our logo. I think she's done a really good job.
It's a good logo. You're probably looking at it now.
Also, thank you to David from Boys from the Pod. He's not only been our co-host on Boys from the Pod, which is our other podcast that you should also go and listen to. Should be out now, I think.
I believe it's out now, yes.
But he's not only done that, but he's basically been the sort of production manager for the whole thing, set up our actually getting the podcast onto platforms and like your YouTube channel, and
he's our pod master.
Yeah. And, of course, huge thank you to the Cultenhove School of Psychic Defence for providing the Prog Slog jingle. And also the music for Boys from the Pod.
Yes.
So, I'm incredibly grateful.
It's been a good response. It's been very heartwarming.
I'm also incredibly grateful to the still quite few, but like more than I was expecting people that have checked out the podcast already.
Yeah.
There's been like, what was it, 50?
About 50 views last check-in.
Like, incredible. Thank you so much.
And if you want to like and subscribe to us, that would help.
Yep.
Isn't necessarily necessary.
We are, I believe, now on Spotify, Apple Podcasts?
I will agree with you.
We have a Twitter, Prog Slog. Is it just called Prog Slog?
Just called Prog Slog on the Twitter.
Slog.
You find it on the X.
We've got a YouTube channel called Prog Slog. We've got our podcasts up there as YouTube videos. And I can't remember if there's anything else that I've got to say.
No, that sounds about right. We'll probably find it and have to fix it in post, but
yeah, thank you so much, and have a great day.
Have a great day. Bye. See you next week.